below me faded away. Ahead, I saw a light, bright, warm, and inviting. It wasn't just a light you see with your eyes. I could feel it, like it was wrapping me in love and peace. I can't explain it fully, but in that moment, I wanted nothing more than to move closer to it. As I moved closer to the light, I began to see a figure standing at the center of it. At first, it was hard to make out, but as I drew nearer, I realized it was a man. His presence was unlike anything I had ever experienced, radiating love, peace, and a sense of familiarity that felt like coming home. It was Jesus. I knew it instantly. He didn't need to say his name. My soul just recognized him. He looked at me with eyes that held infinite compassion, understanding, and a love so overwhelming that it brought me to tears. Every doubt, fear, and regret I had melted away under his gaze. "Michelle," he said, his voice gentle but powerful. "It's not your time yet, but there's something you need to see." I wanted to speak, to ask questions, but I couldn't find the words. It was as if my heart was speaking directly to him, and he could hear everything I was thinking. I felt unworthy to be in his presence, but he reached out and took my hand. The moment he touched me, I felt a warmth that filled every part of my being. Jesus began to guide me, and at first, everything was calm and beautiful. But then the scenery around us started to change. The warmth of the light faded, replaced by a cold, creeping chill. The air grew heavy, and a sense of dread settled over me. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice trembling. "To a place where many souls end up," Jesus said, his tone filled with sadness. "A place of separation from God's love." I realized what he meant. He was taking me to hell. We descended into a vast, dark abyss. The air was thick with smoke, and the faint sound of cries echoed in the distance. The further we went, the louder the cries became, until they were deafening. I could hear people wailing, begging for mercy, their voices filled with regret and despair. We stopped at the edge of a massive pit, its depths flickering with flames. The heat was unbearable, and the stench was overwhelming. As I looked into the pit, I saw countless souls writhing in torment. Their faces were twisted with pain and sorrow, their cries piercing my heart. Among the souls, I began to recognize people from my life. I saw an old neighbor who had been dishonest in his business dealings. I saw a politician whose corruption had hurt countless people. And then, to my shock, I saw people who had been part of the LGBT community. My heart sank. "This can't be right," I whispered. "They didn't hurt anyone. They just wanted to be happy." Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both compassion and sadness. "Michelle, it's not about who they loved. It's about rejecting God's design and living in unrepentant sin. Many of these souls knew the truth, but chose to turn away from it. Others were deceived by the world into believing lies about sin and righteousness." As I watched, I saw the regret on their faces. They were weeping, crying out for another chance, but it was too late. Their separation from God was their greatest torment, not the flames, not the pain, but the absence of his love. One soul, a man I recognized as a famous LGBTQ activist, cried out, "I thought I was fighting for love and equality, but I was really fighting against God. How could I have been so blind?" His words pierced me to my core. I couldn't bear to look any longer. "What about my daughter?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Will she end up here?" Jesus placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "That depends on the choices she makes," he said. "But there's still time for her, and for you to guide her." We moved away from the pit, and the cries of the lost souls began to fade. I felt a deep sadness for them, but also a renewed sense of purpose. I knew that when I returned, I would have a mission to share what I had seen and help others avoid the same fate. Jesus then took me to another place, a place so beautiful that words can't do it justice. It was heaven. The colors were brighter than anything on earth, and the air was filled with music so harmonious, it felt like the very essence of joy. People were everywhere, their faces radiant with peace and happiness. I noticed some of these people had once struggled with LGBTQ issues, just like those I had seen in the pit. But here, they were transformed. They had chosen to align their lives with God's design, despite the challenges they faced on earth. Their joy was indescribable, and their peace was unshakable. How did they overcome? I asked Jesus. Through faith in me, he replied. They repented of their sins, accepted my sacrifice, and allowed my spirit to transform them. It wasn't easy, but they persevered, and now they have received their reward. Finally, Jesus brought me to the throne room of God. The majesty of it was beyond anything I could have imagined. The throne was surrounded by angels, their voices blending in perfect harmony as they worshipped. People I had seen in heaven were casting their crowns before the throne, their faces filled with awe and gratitude. This is the ultimate reward, Jesus said. For those who remain faithful, this is their eternal home. I watched as one woman approached the throne. Jesus told me her story. She had struggled with same-sex attraction all her life, but chose to follow God's word instead of her own desires. Her faithfulness was now being rewarded with a joy that far surpassed anything she had sacrificed on earth. As much as I didn't want to leave, I knew my time in heaven was coming to an end. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both love and purpose. "Michelle," he said, "what you've seen today isn't just for you. You have a mission now. Go back and share this truth with others. Show them my love and guide them to me." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay in the peace and joy of heaven forever. But deep down, I knew Jesus was right. There were so many people, my family, my friends, and even strangers, who needed to know what I had seen. I thought of Emma, and my heart ached with the desire to help her understand God's truth. Jesus reached out and touched my hand one last time. "Remember, I will always be with you. No matter what challenges you face, my spirit will guide you." With those words, I felt myself being pulled away from the throne room. The light and music began to fade, and the next thing I knew, I was back in my hospital bed. I opened my eyes slowly, the fluorescent lights of the hospital room coming into focus. My body felt heavy, like it had been weighed down by 100 pounds of bricks. I could hear the faint beeping of monitors and the soft murmur of voices nearby. "Mom! Mom, you're awake!" Emma's voice was the first thing I heard clearly. I turned my head to see her sitting by my bed, her face streaked with tears. Kevin was standing beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. The relief in their eyes was palpable. I wanted to tell them everything right then and there, but my throat was dry, and my mind was still racing. The doctors later told me I had been unconscious for nearly 24 hours after the accident. They called my survival a miracle, and I knew in my heart that it was.